lot of people are familiar with the Uniswap decentralized exchange, where you could provide concentrated liquidity and earn absurd yields. But the thing is, you can earn even better yields on the same exact pairs on an exchange called Trader Joe. Let's hop in. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Trader Joe exchange. Currently has a TVL of $140 million, and its peak TVL was over $2.5 billion. And that was back when the Avalanche network was blowing up a ton. However, recently, Trader Joe deployed themselves over on the Arbitrum network, capturing a whole nother market for liquidity providing as well as trading fees. Now, Trader Joe currently sits at a TVL of $140 million with its peak TVL above $2.5 billion. Now, the thing is, that's a big drop from its peak TVL, but when we look over at the Avalanche network, it is pretty proportional with performance. As you can see, at one point in time, the Avalanche network nearly had $12 billion of TVL, and now it currently sits at $830 million. So Trader Joe has actually grown a ton when you look at it in retrospect and actually take a step back and look specifically at the Avalanche network. And the main reason why is because Trader Joe recently deployed on the Arbitrum network. And when I say recently, I mean months and months and months ago, but it is starting to get that traction that it deserves after the Arbitrum approved the Arbitrum incentive program, where they're giving out all of these ARB rewards. Ultimately, that has attracted more liquidity on Trader Joe, but that also means since there's more liquidity, aggregators like DeFi Llama or Paraswap are automatically going to route trades to Trader Joe, therefore bringing more volume for liquidity providers, making these absurd returns possible. When we look specifically at some of these pairs like USDC.E to USDC, average APR over the past 24 hours is roughly 17%. Obviously, you have some incentives factored in here as well, which is ultimately paying out that high APR. But even by pairing ARB with ETH, you can get roughly 115%. So I'm going to show you how you can make $317 per day from Trader Joe using the Arbitrum network, but also the Avalanche network, because they have some pretty good returns over there. And quick note, Trader Joe is the leading decentralized exchange on the Avalanche network with $100 million in TVL. Now, the thing is, Uniswap is normally the leading exchange on the networks that it's on, like the Ethereum network, the Arbitrum network, the Polygon network, and all these other networks. But the thing is, Uniswap actually deployed to the Avalanche network quite late, to the point where Trader Joe had already captured the entire Avalanche market, and Uniswap has a measly TVL of 3.5 million on Avalanche. Now, the first pool on this list is going to be AVAX to USDC on the Avalanche network, and the reason why I included this one on the list is because AVAX token has been completely exploding recently. It went all the way from $10 at one point in time all the way up to over $50 in just the time span of about 2 to 3 months, which is pretty absurd returns. But additionally, you can get roughly a 75% APR on this pair. Now, one thing I want to go ahead and mention is on Trader Joe, a lot of people have super tight liquidity. That means that they have a very tight range, and it's not really going to be nearly as passive. So when we look specifically at the average APR over the past 7 days, it's shown 140%. On my spreadsheet, I'm showing that we're doing 75%. So I'm essentially cutting that in half to make up for the fact that our range is going to be broader than other people's. So assuming volume keeps up, a $20,000 investment into AVAX to USDC on Trader Joe is bringing in roughly $12.50 per month, which is roughly $41 per day. That's a pretty good return. Yeah, 41 bucks isn't a lot. When you think about it, that's 41 bucks per day, totaling to $12.50 per month. That's over $12,000 per year. That's a pretty sweet return, I would say. Now, the next pool is going to be Ethereum to CTX. This one actually on the Arbitrum network. We will have some Avalanche pairs later on. One thing I want to go ahead and mention is CTX is a lot higher risk than AVAX token or even Ethereum token, for example. It's on the Arbitrum network on the 0.4% fee tier. It's returning roughly 190% APR. And remember, that is the conservative number, because when we go over here and look at CTX over the past 7 days, you can see it has roughly 380% of rewards APR, but also 30% in fee APR, allowing for a very, very good return. Now let's talk a little bit about what Cryptix is. Essentially, it is a decentralized perpetual exchange. This isn't new technology. We've seen this before. But you can basically execute leverage trades all the way up to 100x leverage, completely decentralized from your wallet address, which is pretty awesome, you know. And there's a ton of exchanges like this, and personally, I haven't done a ton of due diligence into Cryptix, so I would recommend you do your own due diligence. And same thing goes with all of these other assets. You need to check it out to see what you're investing into before you actually invest into it. And by the way, if you guys like DeFi, concentrated liquidity pools, normal liquidity pools, and everything related to passive income, make sure to drop a like and subscribe with notifications turned on so you never miss on any video I post. It's coming up towards the end of the month, so I am going to be be posting an update on my personal portfolio showing how I made over a few $1,000s this month alone from concentrated liquidity. Continuing on the Arbitrum network, we have ARB to USDC.E. Now, a lot of people are probably wondering what USDC.E is, and essentially it represents bridged USDC. So how USDC works is for every one USDC there is in circulation, there is at least $1 in the banks to back USDC essentially. And it's all FDIC insured and is maintained by a platform called Circle. Now, the thing is, when Circle, or USDC I should say, was not cross-chain, people created these things called bridged versions of USDC. That's what USDC.E is. Essentially, every one USDC.E or bridge USDC in circulation, there is one USDC on the original chain, on the Ethereum network, basically. So long story short, it's just another version of USDC, basically. And this is paired with ARB. With this range, it's doing roughly a 195% APR. And keep in mind that's after slashing the APR in half, like I did for all of these pairs. With a $20,000 allocation, you're making roughly $32.50 per month. That's over $100 per day. Now, a lot of people will ask me right now, well, why not just throw it all into ARB to USDC.E? And the reason why is because diversification. You do not want to have all your eggs in one basket. If ARB token completely swings to the downside, you are going to lose money. This is not risk-free. You have to be willing to take on exposure to these underlying assets that I'm talking about. Otherwise, you shouldn't be getting into these pools. Now, another pool is going to be Ethereum to Magic. This one's doing roughly 90% APR, so it's nothing too crazy, but Magic is a pretty interesting asset. I personally do not hold any of it, nor do I really hold any gaming tokens, but I do have a clientele that is very interested in gaming tokens, and I do know a lot of people that are very interested in Magic, as well as a few other gaming platforms like Immutable X, as well as Beam Network. And speaking of Beam, they do have this Beam to AVAX pool, which is doing roughly 480% APR over the past 24 hours. This one's also pretty interesting. I just didn't include it on the list because the yield, at least at the moment, isn't too consistent. And then, of course, I did have to include Ethereum to AVAX on this list, even though it is the lowest performing position at a 70% APR. But ultimately, this is one of the blue chip pools that is going to be almost a safety net in your portfolio because it's number one, Ethereum, which is the second largest crypto asset, and number two, AVAX, which is the 10th largest crypto asset. Both of these have multi-billion-dollar market caps, over $10 billion, as well as over $270 billion. But 70% APR on a $20,000 allocation brings you out to roughly $38 per day and roughly $11.67 per month. When you put all that together, you have $90,000 worth of capital that is allocated. That's over $9,000 per month, so you're doing over 10% per month, and that's roughly $317 per day, assuming these APRs hold up and assuming the volume holds up. When you put that on your overall portfolio, that's over 120% per year, sitting at 129%. Really, really nice. Now, one thing I want to mention, as I will always say, this is not risk-free. You have to be willing to take exposure to these underlying assets, as well as this is somewhat aggressive, so do keep that in mind. What I recommend you do is go check out Trader Joe, go check out some of the assets on this list. If you think you like that asset, look more into concentrated liquidity pools, learn a little bit more about them, and then consider deploying into the liquidity pool. The ones that I'm personally looking into for my personal portfolio are going to be AVAX to USDC, Ethereum to AVAX, as well as ARB to USDC.E. These are the three that I would be comfortable deploying into, mainly because I have a relatively low risk tolerance. But again, I'm still in the crypto industry, so of course I am willing to take some risk. If you guys did enjoy this video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe, notifications turned on. As always, I'm keeping you guys up to date with the latest and greatest content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.